Hey everyone, it's Mark Hayward here from Absolute Business Mindset Podcast and YouTube channel. Today we have a feature-length episode with Chris and Karene Lambert-Gorwyn, who are the founders of Grow Your Heart-Centered Business, a great company which is really helping people build businesses and do it with a heart-centered fashion. They are an interesting husband-wife duo where they talk about their early careers in osteopathy and in cold consulting as well. And we go into a really deep. Chris is very open and really helpful, telling us how he had struggles with credit card debt. And then he had that aha moment, which then refocused his mind on what he wanted to achieve. So we go into Karene talking about what it's like being a mother in business and also being a role model for women in business as well. We talk about their mission to help 1,000 people to become millionaires with heart-centered businesses. And we talk about things like property and business and consulting. And it's a really, really fascinating conversation. What is interesting is we talk about their relationship in business and their personal life, which has made their business be able to flourish and their home life flourish as well. So if you're enjoying this podcast, thank you very much. Please do give it a like. Please do give it a subscribe and hit the bell icon if you're enjoying this podcast, and you will be able to get notifications when the next one is coming. So thank you very much, and straight into the podcast. This is the Absolute Business Mindset Podcast, created and hosted by Mark Hayward. This podcast will interview entrepreneurs, business owners, and people in their careers. We will delve into their journey to success, key life milestones, and go deep into their area of expertise. Get ready to learn from other successes and failures. Today we have a duo. We have Chris and Karene Lambert-Gorwyn. Hello, Chris. Hello, Karene. How are you?
We are very well, thank you.
Happy to be here.
Thank you so much for joining me today. We'll go into the new question, which I've decided to do is, and this is to either of you, whoever wants to jump in, but what does, the podcast is called Absolute Business Mindset. What does a business mindset mean to you?
Sure. Well, I was going to say that there's, interestingly, actually just having a business mindset is quite key, because I know a lot of entrepreneurs and everything else don't actually think of themselves as their business. So it's that concept of you being the best you can be because you are your business. So for me, it's kind of sorting out your mindset so that you can actually achieve optimal performance, because I think a lot of people kind of see themselves as discrete entities. And in reality, it is us and our mindset that will propel us or stop us from great success.
And I think mindset, like we all talk when I've coached people in business coaching, and the mindset is always the foundation, isn't it? It's always the starting point for people. And if they get that right, then they can be successful. But if you don't get it right, it can, as you said, hold you back.
Yeah.
Also with that, I think it's a business, from our perspective, a business is, your job is solving problems, as in that's how any business makes money. It solves problems for its customers, whether you call them clients, consumers, patients. They have a challenge or a problem. The business provides a solution and therefore gets paid for it. But if you extrapolate that wider, it's actually, if you're in business, your entire being is problem solving, which is sometimes easy to forget when life happens, drama happens, of fires, we all, like regular dramas keep on having to be sorted in it day to day in any business. But actually every one of those problems needs to be solved, but you have a choice. Do you solve it short term, as in fix it now and then have to face it again?
Yep.
Or if you actually have that problem solving business mindset, it's that whole, how do I fix this now and fix it, like put a system in place so I don't have to fix it again? And the more I think we step into that, recognize we are a business, we have to have that wider concept. Every problem's an opportunity to improve the service, improve the business. And it kind of makes being an entrepreneurial business owner, we think, is both the most fun you can have and also the most blooming challenging journey you can choose.
Absolutely.
But if you change your mindset round on that every problem's an opportunity to improve the system, and you just accept that's what my business is, no matter what area of industry, I think that's a very solid foundation, or for me, the kind of a root of what we put on it. If you say business mindset, it's like, actually, dig down, that's what it is.
That is the best answer I've had so far on that question. Thank you.
Hey!
So we'll go to education, and we'll go to Chris on this, because you're now in business and immersed in a few different businesses, but you did your degree as an osteopath. What was the inspiration initially to go into medicine?
It was to go into alternative medicine or complementary medicine. I had cancer as a teenager and went through a whole chemotherapy route, saw doctors galore for a long time, and I wouldn't wish it. It was hideous. I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but it also was one of the best things that ever happened to me, because going through that experience gave me that, sounds cliched, and actually it really is cliched, it's that life or death conversation of, if I survive, what am I going to do with my life? And I realized I wanted to make a difference. I was passionate about the human body, how it worked, and how I could help other people with health challenges. But after my own experience with doctors, hospitals, I had no interest in becoming a doctor and going that route.
Right.
Whereas an osteopath to me seemed to be almost like the mechanics of, how's a body, like a Meccano set, how's it fit together? What needs to happen for it to work better? And so that became my passion of, I don't know how long I've got, because I always tell you, when you get cancer, you get through, have the treatment, you're never told you're cured, you're just in remission. It might come back any day. So you kind of go out and live, but it might come back. So I had that whole, okay, what good can I do while I'm here? Let's learn some skills that can help people with their bodies, and just became my passion. Threw myself into that. Well, I did the degree, and then another 10 years of just constant learning more and more from anyone who could help me serve my patients at that time better.
And are you still in that situation with your cancer? Is it still in remission, or is it?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Yeah, it's still remission. I was 17 at the time. I'm now 41. Nothing's come, as in, there's been no scares or hints at any point throughout time. But the way they cannot officially say they've cured cancer, so you're always on a watch list, as it were.
Oh, wow. So
which is what I actually feel so grateful for, weirdly, because it's, most people have to wait until their 50s or 60s until they had that first heart attack to have that life and death wake-up call. Whereas I had it when I was so young, so I became super focused on, well, life is short, what am I going to do? What difference can I make? Which, like I said, it's a bit cliched, but it's actually still what drives me.
It's so fascinating, because there's Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V, talks about that whole point, like what's the best thing for your mindset? Is like, if you had to die tomorrow, what would you do? Yeah. And you actually lived through that. So it's fascinating. And do you remind yourself of that, or like, because obviously, as you haven't had any sort of remission, but you've been in remission, you haven't had any recurrence, your sort of mindset, I assume, slightly reduces on the height of tension about it. But do you reflect on it to say, oh, actually, I still need to drive forward with my business and my lifestyle?
Yes and no, as in different ways. As in, it's the same drive, but it's less triggered by the fear of, I might die tomorrow, or cancer might come back.
Right.
And it's more triggered by, actually, initially it was, how can I make myself, my family okay financially? Because living for the moment, living for the day is great, and I've achieved so much from that. And yet forward planning doesn't come into that. So I also ended up 100 grand in debt, because it was always that, oh, don't worry about money today, don't worry about paying me, or, oh, I'll do another course and learn something. Right. Time short, don't pay for it later.
Right.
And later caught up with me. So now it's much more tempering, making longer term plans and committing to those plans of, okay, how can we be okay financially long term? How can we make a bigger difference worldwide, with more people creating their own economy, being financially secure, but with the drive of, yeah, life is short. But now life is short from a fun perspective of how much we're enjoying it, how much difference can I make, rather than, oh my God, I've got limited time. Yep. What difference can I make? Does that make sense?
It does. Now, I want to hear your story about this 100K's worth of debt. But I want it's fascinating. It really is, because we all we all racked up these sort of steps. But I just want to ask Karene, so your education and your experience was all based around sort of consulting. So your business experience, Westpac, KPMG, PA Consulting, all big companies, or most of it, like big companies that have good consultancy side to it. So what drove you towards that focus for your early stage of your career?
That's an interesting story as well, I guess. And ironically, so I wasn't into blood. So I was never going to go into saving people in that way. So I thought, well, what else could I do that would allow me to support people? And early on in high school, actually, I was bullied. So as a kind of I'll show you response to that, I was very driven to succeed. And it was like, that was my main drive, was I will not let anybody stand in my way, which was a blessing and a curse in many respects, because I wouldn't then let anybody in, and I was very emotionally invulnerable, all of that kind of stuff. And so that led me to have some great tools in terms of success and everything else. And partly I chose consulting because I didn't actually have to decide what I needed to do. So I wasn't single focused. I was like, what can I do that gives me the broadest experience so I can support people, but I don't have to choose? Because I didn't have Chris's single-minded focus of how I could help people. I was a bit like, I do want to help people, but I'm not sure how that works. So consulting was a great opportunity to have such varied experiences, making massive differences with people's businesses, and also then the people that they support. So yes, there were large organizations, but I always felt that it was the people that I got to work with where I was making the bigger difference. And that then translated into good stuff, like loads of experience traveling around the world, all of those sorts of things. But it was also quite an empty experience for me as well, because of the barriers that I'd put up for what I thought I needed to be successful or to look successful. So it wasn't until I had an accident, fell down the stairs, broke my shoulder in 5 places, and banged my head, etc., had 3 months off work and had my epiphany of, I'm not sure this is what I want to do anymore. But I still kept doing that, and I still get a kick out of supporting people in that way. So I just transformed and morphed, because that kind of coincided with me meeting Chris and seeing that there were other opportunities, because I always thought entrepreneurs were other people. Like my mother worked in a law firm, my father worked in project management and did a load of jobs in government, etc. So it was always, you were an employee and you had a corner office, and that was success. So it was always, I was going to be a partner in a management consultancy firm. And then I kind of went, oh, maybe not. So it was, it was quite a different kind of, I don't think I had a life and death experience, but it was certainly, 3 months off work on some serious painkillers and all that kind of thing does give you some time to reassess what do you want out of life. And I got into yoga to rehabilitate myself, and connected more with what I wanted in terms of relationships and all of those sorts of things that I'd perhaps pushed down in the thought that I couldn't have both, and then realized there was a different way, which happily coincided with meeting Chris, but also with his debt baggage.
So proud of that.
that also meant some different decisions as well, in terms of and him having cancer. We never thought that we were going to be parents. We always thought we'd have to adopt. I became a mum. I then wanted to be a present mum. So I then had that whole conundrum that most women face at some point of, well, how do you juggle life and childcare and work and still be a role model and all of those sorts of things. And I like to think that now I've kind of mainly got that cracked, in terms of I get to go to pick up and drop off and most of the activities around school, and still demonstrate that women can work and be powerful and all of those kind of good things as well. So like to think that I'm getting there on that. It's not always perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but
work-life balance is a really tough one. I've got young kids, and it's not always easy being able to manage both businesses and children as well. I want to come back on another point that you've made about women and what the perception of a woman in business is. So I'll come back to that. But Chris, why don't we talk about this debt? Not I don't want to sort of like, but I'm just really interested. Someone that got into that point of situation with debt. I racked up a lot of debt at university and paid it off student loans and paid back and things like that. And it took me quite a challenge to actually get into the right mindset to actually pay that off. But racking up 100K's worth of debt, what was the turning point for you that you were like, actually, I've got to deal with this now and actually pay it off?
I can smile now because, yes, there's guilt and shame and embarrassment and all that, but it ever got anywhere near that, because I wish I could say it was a crazy weekend in Vegas and then I stopped gambling and it was all okay. But no, I guess it was the whole, like I said, I was so driven with what am I here for, make a difference, that, and I guess part of that, without realizing, always having that business mindset of there's always a way. If you want something enough, there's always a way, there's always a solution, there's always an option. And unfortunately, the option I kept choosing, say, to do more courses, learn more stuff, was about put it on a credit card, shuffle debt round, move it. So it built up slowly. Right. And I just kept ignoring it and moving it around and putting my head in the sand. And it was, I think there were several, I would love to say one epiphany, and it all changed. There was where I started changing, but building up to that, it was starting to realize everything I was learning was for my clients. As in, I was always learning more, better techniques, new skills, expertise. And it was actually Karene pointed out, you've never studied business or marketing or sales or cash, like anything at all, finances. Mm. And it's like, well, I don't need to study that. I'm an osteopath, I'm a practitioner. Like, people come to me. And it's true, they did, but they didn't always pay. And I didn't manage anything. I didn't realize that business money. I had no idea I was running a business. I thought I was the expert. Not that I was running an expert business, if that makes sense, or a business being an expert. Yeah. So I guess that was the start of understanding, to be blunt, I'm learning the wrong things. Not wrong. There's nothing wrong with learning things that help your clients and help you perform better. But it's that concept of this is all to help them. But if I don't actually manage to help myself financially, I can't carry on helping them. Yeah. And then Karene found this free sales training, like a one-day sales training, put on for free and suggested politely that I go. There was no real option. She knew I needed it. I was very resistant though. And I sat there in this seminar, this guy on stage who was a multi-millionaire talking about how he's done it and teaching good stuff, but I was so arms folded, resistant, like, I don't need this rubbish. And he said one thing that then literally, that was my epiphany, where everything else that I kind of been realizing all came into place, and everything changed. Where he said, what happens if you do nothing? And at that moment, it's almost like the classic movie moment, the lights dimmed, a movie played in my head. But it's that because, if nothing happens, I'm 100K in debt. It's going to get worse. We're going to lose our house. We either move in with my parents, which I knew was never an option for Karene, which means we go to Australia. Actually, she goes to Australia. I couldn't work in Australia. So I suddenly lose my wife, my young daughter. And then within literally a couple of seconds of him saying that, my movie had played out, but I'm homeless, alone in a ditch, about to die. I'm a bit dramatic at times. But it was that whole realizing, holy cow, it is this bad. I am so deep in the hole. I've got to do something different. So I went to the back of a room, this seminar hall, and I just said to his team, I don't care what he's going to sell, I'm buying it. And they were so, They were so flustered. Apparently no one's ever done that before. And so I didn't have any forms. And we finally got them ready and said, right, I don't care how much it is. Here's a card. Like, oh, tell me how much. Oh, okay. Well, put some of it on that card, some of it on this card, some of it on this. And I hoped every card had a little bit of enough balance left to cover it all. And then went home to Karene and said, honey, gone further into debt. A very fine moment for me.
Of course.
Bless her, she said the exact best thing, which was, are you going to make it work? So, yes. Then I trust you. And it was that actually then triggered everything for me, because I'd bought a sales training course that then led me into going, oh, coaching can help. So then I got a business coach, and then that led into, I went from, at the time I was earning about 20 grand a year. I was earning about 2 grand a month, spending 8 to cover all the debt and things like that. 12 months later, 10 months later, I broke my first £100,000 in the business. 5 years later, we have multiple companies, multiple properties across the country. And it all came from that one moment of realizing I've got to do something different, because what I've done for 20 years has got me to where I am, but it's not going to get me to a different place.
How did you meet?
We met at a yoga studio opening. So I was heavily into Bikram yoga, which is the 26 postures in a heated room.
Oh, yeah.
Really sweaty for an hour and a half. And the guy who's opened hot yoga in Wimbledon was a mutual friend of ours that we didn't know at the time. So I'd helped him with the studio opening and was meeting and greeting people. And Chris came out of the ladies' toilets and I asked him if he was lost.
Which I clearly was. In my defense, but there's not much defense, but it was still in construction. There were no signs on the door, so I didn't know.
And to be fair, the men's only had urinals. So if you needed the loo with a door, then you did have to go into the ladies.
Thank you. I just thought it was a good question to ask, as I've got the pair of you on how that actually happened. So Karene, just one more thing. Well, you talked about your perception of what a business woman was like previously when you were in consulting, and now it's obviously changed. What advice would you say? So I've got 2 young girls, 5 and 7, they're nearly 6 and 8. What advice would you give them now as young children that they can sort of take on for womanhood and going through their teenage years and into their 20s?
Oh, big question. And but I guess our daughter's 9. And we've been kind of encouraging her along the way of, you can do anything you want. And I think it's that we all have that perception of, oh, I could, but I can't. Or maybe people think it's not okay, etc. But I think it's just whatever you can do to reinforce their confidence that whatever they want to do is going to be absolutely perfect. And there isn't a right, or there is no kind of, you must do this. And I think that's where we all, the must, the shoulds, the what's appropriate, all of that kind of stuff doesn't help women in particular, because we either go into having to be Superwoman and think that we have to do it all alone, or we just underperform. And there doesn't seem to be a happy kind of common ground. And I think that was my biggest problem. And so therefore what I'm trying to instill in Maya is that it's actually a strength to get support. It's a strength to ask for help. You don't have to do everything by yourself. We don't all have the answers. Chris and I are very keen to instill in her that whilst she may think that we are superhuman, because all parents, are until they're not, but that we are fallible, we are human, we do have to ask questions. And so, ask as many questions, find out as much as you can, be curious about the world and find what you are passionate about. And also bear in mind that you can't just be passionate, you also need to support other people, because I think that whole Zig Ziglar quote of, the more people you can help, the more you're going to help yourself. And I think that's kind of our family philosophy around being curious, being courageous, and being kind is the key things that we've sort of instilled. And if you've got that cracked, then pretty much anything else is okay. Because I went through the corporate scenario where you had the queen bee in the organization. I had women who I'd worked with who actually referred to themselves as perfume steamrollers. Wow. And they were really proud of that as well, which was slightly concerning. And it's really only now that, as you know, that women are actually supporting each other in the workplace, because it used to be, oh, I got into the boys club, I'm not letting you in because I had to fight to get there, so you have to as well, which is obviously a very unhelpful attitude. And I'm really excited that there is more openness of women to be inclusive, to realize that we are stronger together. You know, the whole lean in stuff, everything that's about us being able to do things together, I think is really important, because, you know, education and everything else is very, you know, what marks do you get? How do you perform, etc. But you look at all the entrepreneurs that are out there, they all have a support network. They've all had coaches, mentors, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger, you know, he's like, what do you mean I'm a self-made man? You know, I've had this whole army of people getting me here. And I think we forget that and particularly, you know, with the advent of social media and everybody with their, oh, look at my Instagram feed and this and that and the other thing. And it can be very easy to fall back into that trap of thinking you have to do it alone. So I think it's really important that we keep that community feel for all of us, to know that it's actually, you know, there's strength in numbers, there's strength in community, there's strength in getting support. It's not about who can beat to get there, etc. So I think that's a really important message for all of us, really, but girls in particular. I think it can become unnecessarily competitive.
I think you're right. I think there was a shift in my 15 years in Big Four. There was definitely a shift where it was women were more supportive, and I've had people on my podcast as well who have been women entrepreneurs and really fought for other women entrepreneurs to be successful. And I think there has been a shift. I'm not sure when it was or what sort of when that tipping point occurred, but there definitely seemed to be a change in support for women with women, where, as you said previously, it was all that I'm going to protect my lot and you can't come in, sort of thing, because you're a competitor. So I hope that continues. I hope that happens in my daughter's lives as well, is that continues and there is support, because from my side, men need support as well, and men need support from women just as much as they need support from men as well. So I think that's something. I think the vulnerability of men now has increased as well, which has probably played a role in women becoming not more successful, but climbing up the corporate ladder and becoming entrepreneurs, because they realize that men are fallible as well and need support as well. So I think it does work both ways.
Well, what we've noticed as well, Disney, which might seem a bit of a tangent, by the way, Disney, we've noticed, is a great barometer of what's actually going on in society generally at the time their movies are released. So Disney traditionally was the helpless female and the heroic man rescues them. And that for years was the narrative. Yeah. And then over the last, probably so the last 10 to 15 years, it's changed and it's become the strong female protagonist. Yeah. But interestingly, in order to have that, they made the male character the idiot joker. Like they had to bring the male down to put the female up. And it's been in the last couple of years now, along with like the Marvel movies, which are obviously linked with Disney, etc. But then a lot of the other movies now, you actually have both male and female strong protagonists, rather than one gender's up, which means the other one must be down. So hopefully this kind of means there's more, like you say, the understanding of both genders, we benefit from each other rather than it being a competitive one up or the other one up.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely a sort of win-win scenario. You both can win. It's not necessarily like I win and the other person loses. I think that's a really interesting point about Disney and about that, because I actually believe that men are suffering a little bit at the moment, because what the testosterone driven alpha male, the millennial generation, I'm not saying that, like, the whole snowflake, I really I don't really like but I do think men now actually need support of men and women.
Yeah.
And the sort of generation, my daughter's age group with boys, I actually think we might end up with a bit of a problem that men are actually a little bit pushed down and not encouraged in the way that they should be as well. So I think it's going to be an interesting dynamic for the next 20, 30 years, seeing when our children grow up, how that actually affects boys and girls. So let's see how that unfolds. Let's talk about your business, heart-centered business. You can talk about your book in a minute as well, but tell me a little bit about what the business is, what do you do, and how you help people.
Fundamentally, every business we have, heart-centered business being one of them, overall they all have a mission to help 1,000 people or 1,000 heart-centered people become millionaires. Now, the money, the millionaire part, on one level it was irrelevant, as in whether people get to 900,000 or multiple millions, but it's the whole, if 1,000 heart-centered people had more money, they will be doing more good in the world, both through their businesses, through their careers, and they'd have more of their own money to give to charity, to family, to connections. So that's kind of a mission, or not kind of, that is the mission we have across our entire business collection. But heart-centered business itself is primarily about helping business owners in that zero to sort of 2 to 3 million bracket, typically is our playing field of helping them succeed and grow their business. And we're primarily in the service business space. But what I mean more with that, it's people who have an expertise and sell their skills to someone else. So it could be a health expert, osteopath, chiropractor, massage person, physio, personal trainer. It could be someone in the corporate space, executive coach, life coach, etc., or accountant. Anyone who's got
lighting designers, garden designers.
We've worked with them all. So it's all, the business model for anyone selling their services, their skills is the same, even though there might be hundreds of nuances of the individual profession. It's all just about, fundamentally, we teach relationship building, as in it all comes down to, for want of a better, old-fashioned customer service, we think is the key to any business growth. Now, there's so many ways to do that, and it depends on the business, the client type, etc. But it's all about what's right for the individual business owner, what's right for their clients, and how can we grow their business. And typically our clients increase by between 50,000 and 100,000 within 12 months of implementing our systems. So it's fun. And we've got a team of people who help us do that. What have we got now? 14 employees?
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, something like that. I should know exactly. Apologies.
Well, that's fantastic. 14 employees. You're building a business. You talk about implementing systems and personal fulfillment as well, which I think is incredibly important. I've been having this for a conversation with people a lot, is the difference between happiness and fulfillment. My theory is happiness can be fleeting and is often a dopamine hit of something happening, where fulfillment is what we should be really striving for. And actually, if you feel fulfilled in your business, your life, that is the true key to success, rather than having these fleeting moments of happiness.
I like that. Because I've always said that for me, one of the key things of happiness is progress. It doesn't matter what part of life, but I do think we struggle to feel happy, which actually I kind of think actually I prefer your definition. I'll put actually progress for me would be a key part of fulfillment.
Right.
But feeling like something is moving forward.
Yeah.
As in, because I think it's also quite popular currently to talk down ambition, to talk down striving for more. No, we should be content. Or say, live below your means, accept what you have. And I'm great with that, in the sense of, yeah, totally. Be happy with what you have and strive for more, because why not? Why not from a sense of greed, but from we truly believe just because we can, it actually means we must, because if we now know how to build businesses, we actually have a duty to pass that knowledge on, because we weren't born with it. We learned it from other great coaches and from making lots of mistakes. So we can pay that forward to other people. It's kind of a duty to do so.
Yeah. And I think, the conversation that we have with a load of people and that's you coming all the way back to mindset is, oh, I can't be greedy. I don't need to earn that much money. I'm just going to satisfy my needs. And the conversation I have and the challenge that I have with them is, okay, so if you earn more money, do you have to keep it? Could you not give it away? Are you not passionate about, earning it for other people? If you have that capacity, why would you put a ceiling on it rather than just earn as much as you possibly can and give it away?
Yeah.
So, and that really shifts people's mindset of, oh, well, yes, okay, I'm on board with that. Because I do think that a lot of us keep ourselves stuck and limited by some of those beliefs around money, around greed, around, not striving for more and more and more because it's considered to be wasteful or overly ambitious or any negative things, whereas actually it's just about abundance. If you're creating abundance, other people will have that as a knock-on effect. Because if you're living in scarcity, then you do start getting competitive. You do start thinking, oh, this is my pie and I can't share it, etc. Whereas if you're just creating more pies, then everyone can have pies.
Exactly. It's that key point between, it's not greed, it's abundance. And that life of abundance is what we should be striving for.
For a record, we don't sell pies. That's not one of our business.
Karene, I read on your bio that you're a property investor. I'm not sure. Do both of you invest in property? What's your strategy for property?
Well, so when Chris was, so as part of my kind of journey into what was I going to do if I wasn't going to be in the corporate world, I didn't know what that looked like. So kind of I 25 weeks pregnant and I went off and became a yoga teacher because I felt like I needed a piece of paper to transition out of the corporate world. And I also read Rich Dad Poor Dad at that time.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, so that was a massive epiphany moment for me. And I guess we kind of fell into Chris kind of focusing on our active income and me looking more at what could I do passively, because I was still with that, how can I be a mom and what can I do more part-time? And so we had our first following obviously Rich Dad Poor Dad philosophy of how we invest, etc. We had our first offer accepted whilst I was being induced.
To give birth with mine. We're in the hospital.
We're in hospital. Got the phone call. Your offer's been accepted. Fantastic. So that was our first.
And I now concentrate on this.
Now I can focus. Yeah. And I think we did that from a book, and then I guess we realized that we needed to, I realized I needed to know more. So I then went out and got trained and got a mentor and bought 8 and in quick succession, etc. So I built our £1 million portfolio in kind of 9 months. I think we
Wow.
got to.
That's fast.
So I was really like, how can I do this in the shortest possible time so that I can have time and and therefore create that passive income as quickly as possible. So then we had a choice of that kind of gave me that, in my mind, that was my freedom of choice to be a present mum whilst still contributing, because I had been financially independent until Chris, and therefore I didn't want to give that up. And so that was my way of kind of working out where that fit. So I kind of went down this route of I'll focus on the passive income. I mean, obviously, Chris, I discuss everything with him and everything else, but that was sort of my focus. That was my kind of lead. And then we found out, I guess, in me doing that and you doing the business stuff, that actually we had crossover skills in both of those areas, which was when we combined to create what is now Heart Centered Business. So it was bringing both of our skill sets from those two different backgrounds together. And so we run the property portfolio on the side, just as part-time thing.
So what do you individually bring to Heart-Centered Business?
I would love to say my humor and jokes, but the team always tell me that's not what I bring at all. I think on a simplistic level, it goes back to who we are, as in, obviously it's a male and a female perspective. It's also a corporate and a non-corporate. I've never been an employee in my life. I'd be a terrible employee perspective. So like, we come from very different backgrounds and have very different experiences. and we see things very differently, both because of that and also just because of who we are generally. So I think is that on another side, I'm all about the big picture. For me, it's always about the vision, the goal. Yes, we can do that, and very much coming up with the ideas. And Karene is.
Then I'm like, how do we do that?
Yeah.
What are the nuts and bolts of doing that? What do the systems look like? Where do people have to go for all of that? So then it becomes very implementation oriented and bringing people along on that journey. And how does that actually manifest in their day-to-day reality? So I've just spent the last 2 days with our clients actually going through 2 days of systems training, which was all about how to get more done, how to be more efficient and effective with the time, because we all have the same amount of time, but how do we do that in the time that we have available? And I think my natural tendency is, yes, I can see the big picture, but I'm also questioning, how does that happen? How do we make that a reality? Because I think that's where a lot of entrepreneurs get stuck in that, oh, but I've got this great vision, and now what do I do? So I think Chris and I bring both that pushing people beyond where they might otherwise limit themselves and allowing them to make that a reality.
It's the how and the what, isn't it? It's how do you achieve it and what do you need to do to achieve it?
I think you need both, because I'm totally happy taking risk. I always look to try and have a safety net now, having been in debt mastery. Now, risk with a safety net. However, I'm much more comfortable in that state of kind of going, we're entrepreneurs. Life, income, business, it's all up and down. Karene, I think because of her corporate world, is much more, I like consistency. So what can we do to create stability? But you need both. And that's why you can't just have the visions and the dreams. And also you can't just have the risk averse. So we must stay safe and small. I'm not saying that's how you think, but it's the whole, you have to bring both together, which is why running a business with your partner is both the best and the worst thing in the world at times, because sometimes Karene's just like, will you stop just coming up with pie in the sky ideas and take focus to get one thing done? And I'm just like, stop saying no to me. This is a brilliant idea. And so there's all of that back and forth, but it's also what makes it so successful and also fun. Because if you don't have someone else in, and I strongly recommend anyone get a team. If you're not working with a partner, you need to find people in your team with that opposite mindset, skill set, but who can understand both sides of that fence. Yeah. Because we both get where we're coming from. We can both do it.
Yeah, or a mastermind group or something like that can give you that idea and inspiration so you don't have to feel so alone. Because I think that is one of the challenges of being an entrepreneur, is that a lot of people are very extroverted and love having people around, and yet they've gone on this solo journey where they're not surrounded by people, and that's where they kind of come unstuck, going, now who do I talk to? So it becomes quite lonely for an extroverted person, because introverted people are generally less likely to be in that entrepreneurial space because they're not willing to take risks and to get out there and talk to people, etc. So they might be there, but perhaps they shouldn't.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so what's the plan for the next 2 to 5 years?
Interesting question.
That changes almost daily.
So I'm going to ask Karene, what's the plan for the next 2 to 5 years?
We'll get a lot shorter, easier answer.
Yeah, but I think we've expanded into complementary services. So we have a publishing company now. We've got a company that looks at making people in the corporate space more successful. So speaking to shine, actually allowing people, regardless of whether they're on an entrepreneurial journey or an employee journey, kind of how can they all be the best they can be? So it's that kind of heart-centered component to all of that. We have a copywriting company now as well. We're just about to launch our company that's looking at what are all the systems and the technology that small businesses need, so that they can have that on a subscription basis that grows with them. Have I missed anything?
Yeah,
we've got our supplement business. Yes.
Fitness company, as well as then there's in the works with a coaching company. Actually, people are always asking us, okay, so how do I love what you guys are doing. How do I become a coach? So we're going, well, actually, let's train them. So we're putting that together as well. So in some ways, it didn't all come out of the pandemic, but we went into a pandemic with 2 companies, and right now we've got 7. And it's what the big thing that's changed for us is team. So over the last 2 years, it's been much more about expanding our team, expanding our both team of employees, but also our business partners, and looking at much more collaboration so we can achieve more. So over this year, we literally had a discussion on our key business partners yesterday and said, okay, let's not open any more businesses this year, because we've literally opened, so we need to get, they're all doing well, but they're all still early stage. So let's get them all sorted. Let's get them all to mid 6-7 figures in this year.
Yeah.
And then next year, we've got so many other plans and ideas, which we're frustratingly parking, but just because otherwise, if we open too many things at once, then nothing's actually going to serve people in the way that they could.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Okay, we're coming to the end of the interview. I asked the same 6 questions to all my guests. They are quick-fire questions. They don't need a quick-fire answer. They've been described as a little bit thought-provoking as well by people. I guess we'll do them alternately, but if anyone wants to jump in, then please do. Let's go, Chris. The first question is, what's the best decision that you made?
Well, Karene's standing right beside me. Without fail, I will naturally say yes, marrying her. And I'll give you other answers later.
Okay. When we stop record, then you can tell us something different.
It actually, yes, obviously, honey.
Yes,
but it's also, I actually think the best decision was what I touched on earlier, was that whole choosing to get a coach, choosing to get a mentor. That was the action that came out of it, but the decision was actually, I'm going to own my reality. As in, I'm actually going to own, rather than, I had the blame mindset before, as in, I'm in this situation because of someone else, because of this, because of that. It wasn't my fault. And actually deciding to own my life, the good, the bad, the ugly. Yeah. Scary as that was, that allowed me to, that empowered me that if I created it, I can change it. Yeah. And that then led into, okay, so now get a coach, get people who can teach me what I need to know to change it. Yeah. So that would hands down be the best decision, because then that actually has led to everything we have. It led to our relationship being what it is. Because it's, if I make mistakes, it's about owning it, rather than trying to get away with it and blame other people. Even if it's just in my mind, even if I leave the fridge door open, it's accepting I did it rather than trying to make an excuse for it.
Yeah, I think that's terribly important in relationships. Doesn't matter if it's couples or business partners. I think that's very important. Karene, what's the best piece of advice you've been given?
Ooh,
obviously something
you've said. Wow. Gosh, I guess there's so many pieces of advice, so many books read, so many videos watched. What's not sure about the best one, but I think probably actually would just be around that being authentic, and actually you don't need to hide your mistakes, because they actually make you more powerful. So there is no mistakes, there is no success, it's all learning, it's all feedback. It will all move you forward if you own it. Whereas if you try and avoid it, or are ashamed of it, or hide it in some way, shape or form, it's going to come out again. So you might as well just come warts and all and everything else, and move forward with all of you, because every single part of you, whether you like it or not, is what's got you to where you've got to. And using all of the tools that you have rather than ignoring them will actually help you accelerate your journey far more powerfully than trying to emulate somebody else or be something else. So I think there's a lot of that, we kind of get into that, you've got to model other people. And yes, you can model to a degree, but you also have to bring yourself. Yeah. So you can model to a point, but you then have to make it your own. And I think that's the difference between success and failure for me, is the people who think that if I just copy this, if I just do this, I'll be successful, and they forget to bring themselves to it. And I think that advice of, we're all unique and special individuals, which we are, and we all have something to bring. So when I was given the advice of, we're all powerful as we are, stop trying to be something else or hide or anything else, that kind of opened up a world of possibility. And I see that in the people that we work with, having trained thousands of business owners now, when they step into their power and their special source and stop trying to be what they think they should be, that's when their businesses actually take off.
Fantastic, great answer.
Actually, if I can just add to that, sorry, because it kind of links to that, but I think for me as well, the best verse I was given, I again read it in a book, but you mentioned him earlier, the late great Zig Ziglar, when he said, money's not the most important thing in the world, but it is right up there just underneath oxygen. And it suddenly dawned on me about, because I was in the health world, the healing world, I dismissed money, whereas having someone point out, well, if you don't have money in today's world, you can't really do anything. Like we can all say, oh, money's not important, I don't need money. But then you have to be reliant on someone else giving you money for your rent, for your food, for your clothes, for basically everything. So I think money seems a dirty word, but actually seeing it like that, that the society we live in has made money the exchange for everything. It's not wrong. Money itself isn't bad, wrong, etc. It's what you do with it.
Yeah. It gives you options as well.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what opened my mind to, I could maintain my passion and my drive and earn a lot of money. It's not one or the other. Absolutely.
I'm going to ask this to Karene, actually. I was going to do it alternately, but I'm going to ask this to Karene, because I think we've covered this a couple of times with you.
I won't be offended, it's okay.
Who helped you most in your career, Karene?
Wow. In some respects, it's my mum, ironically, just because of her unwavering belief in me and her constantly being there allowed me to ask questions, allowed me to take risks, allowed me to seek out other people, allowed me to get support and help. So there's been so many different people who have helped me on my journey, but she's always been there as a, whatever you want to do, you can do it. Even when I didn't believe those things, having her as my own personal cheerleader, even when I didn't realize that that's what she was, and I moved to the other side of the world and all of those sorts of things, and because they're still in Australia and that's where I was. And so even when you go through those years of not wanting to be friends with your mum and everything else, I think she was always there, and I didn't always appreciate it. But I do think that that's probably what's helped me to then seek out other people and to get mentors, because I didn't even realize I was doing it at the time, I think, initially. And it wasn't until I started reading more personal development books that because everybody would say, well, who do you aspire to be? And I was like, well, in consulting, unfortunately, there's a load of people with broken relationships who are not very happy, might be earning a load of money, but are quite dissatisfied and hiding behind drink and a whole bunch of other things that may not be great for them. So I didn't really find aspirational leadership in a person, but there were characteristics of people that I worked with that I admired, and I would naturally gravitate towards wanting to work with them. And I think that supported my journey without me realizing it at the time. And it was that unconscious competence in that area of finding people who I thought were successful, until I read more about it and then went, oh, actually, I need to seek out people who can support me, etc. So Chris and I have had the privilege of traveling around the world and meeting many amazing people and spending time with loads of amazing people. Like Chris has spent time with Richard Branson. We both got to meet Randy Zuckerberg. We've met Les Brown, met Robert and Kim Kiyosaki. So spending time with these people, there's not one person per se, other than my mother, who's been that constant, but it's actually finding people who are doing what you love, what you admire, and spending time with them and seeing what makes them tick, etc. And just finding those gems from all of those people, I think, has been a real gift for us, and is something that I like and that we feel obliged to pass on, because we've had that privilege. And I know with COVID and everything else, people haven't been able to travel and meet people in that same way. So
I think it's a telling sign when you're in a company and there's no one above you that you would like to be.
Yes.
I think it's what you said, Karene, was that you see characteristics in people that you'd like to, and you convince yourself that, well, I can be a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but actually when you're looking for, I don't know, coaching or mentoring, you do have to think, like, is the person above me or 3 points above me, do I actually want to be that person? Would you say with broken relationships or obsession with titles? That's what I found in Big Four, was like people were obsessed with what grade they were, not what they did.
No.
Actually meant less what they did. It was, well, I am this and I am that. I was just, anyway, it's a strange scenario to have that realization that actually there's no one that you aspire to be, and even like what they are is all based around what that label they are, rather than, are they good people, are they good at their jobs, do they love what they do they have passion for their work. So I get that. I do understand that. Chris, any regrets?
How long have you got? Well, I say that in reality, yes, I do regret so many actions and mistakes I've made, and yet I also don't, because I fully subscribe to I'm exactly who I am today based on everything I've done, and I'm more shaped by my failures, by my screw-ups, by getting things wrong or being embarrassed or something like how. That's made me change and become more conscious of who I am, much more than my successes. So as much as I would happily go and rewrite much of my past.
Well, it's just because you've said about the debt, and I get that, and again, I can sort of understand where you come from there. But is there any, I'm going to push you a little bit harder on that, because I accept what you're saying, because I get two answers with this question. The first answer is, I'm a sum of all my parts, good and bad, and I wouldn't change anything because I'm here.
Yeah.
And I get why people say that, but equally, I actually think it's a bit of a cop-out, because people do have regrets. I'm sorry, there's some things, even if it's an ex-partner or something like that, and you treated them badly because you were obsessed with work, whatever it was. So I'm going to push you a little bit harder on this, Chris. Is there anything, barring the debt, that if you could change, and there was nothing that changed as who you are now, and so we're not changing the world, we're just saying, if you had a choice, what would you, is there anything, and you can say no, but is there anything that you would say that you wish you hadn't have done?
Yeah, when you put it like that, and how I push myself a bit harder on this, my fear of confrontation, that's all my life I've avoided making other people unhappy, from a sense of either started my parents not wanting to let them down, or being a peacemaker in my family, to then not speaking my mind with friendships. The most dramatic example would be my ex-wife before I met Karene. I was married, and it was, if I'm honest with myself, and I hate admitting this, it was a relationship that never should have progressed. It had so many good bits and bad bits, but it's a relationship that never should progress like it did, because I wasn't prepared to be honest with myself and then honest with my ex about how I felt about certain things, what was going on, etc. Because it was my fear of confrontation that was then compounded because it turned into an abusive relationship when I was being abused in it. But it then led me into more, don't express yourself, don't risk the confrontation of how she might react, explode. I mean, I can see since, even though eventually I did get to a point where I actually did express myself and realized the relationship's not going anywhere, we need to end it, etc. I can also see since then, it's something I've been working on, but actually any time a situation hasn't worked out with an employee that we've had, or any time like a friendship that hasn't worked, or a business partner or something, if I look at it honestly, actually, I was aware and I could acknowledge the problems way before they were actually big problems, but I chose the easy road of not addressing it rather than actually, dare I say, confronting it. I'm not talking picking fights. I just more mean bringing something up that was unpleasant. And yet if I'd done that sooner, either the relationships could have been saved, or they could have parted ways far sooner and far happier, rather than, unfortunately, if like with employees, if something's not right and you ignore it, or you hope it will go away, it just gets worse. And then by the time you deal with it, it's so much bigger and worse than it would have been. So probably that, actually, the thing I would change would be my unwillingness to confront that unpleasantness that might need to be raised.
Thank you so much for your honesty. I really appreciate it. And I was being a little bit unkind to push you.
You did warn us, you'll put us on the
spot. So thank you for that. Thank you for the honesty that you've provided there. Karene, what are you most proud of?
Well, my daughter would be like, because she is growing into such an amazing little human. And I'm just super, super proud of her. And then I guess my other baby, which is our business. Businesses, yes. Well, it's the amorphous blob of business. But yeah, I think creating something that inspires people, that allows them to connect with their passion, that allows them to have the life of their dreams. I am so humbled by the impact that they all have in the world, because they have allowed themselves that permission to succeed. And that ripple effect that they have is just phenomenal. And I'm really, really proud of all of the businesses that we've created and all of the people that we've influenced in terms of the success that they've gone on to create.
That's amazing. Thank you. And Chris, what does legacy mean to you?
Interesting one. For me, it's we have a phrase that we both try and live by of leave people and places better than when you found them. Nice. So for us, that means, for example, whenever we walk a dog, we'll pick up litter on the way and just drop it off at a bin, or we'll smile at people in the street, because when they smile back, well, we all know a smile, it changes the biochemistry, it changes your mindset, it changes everything. And if they can they get smiled at and they spontaneously, without realizing, smile back, you've left them in a better space. Or having a conversation with a checkout person on Sainsbury's or Waitrose or whatever, that you leave people and places better than when you found them. So for me, legacy is that. That's awesome. And that concept, as I said before, the cliche of what good can I do while I'm here? And then the nuances of that come into, it's making sure my family and my loved ones are sorted, no matter what happens to me. But more than that, it's not us being able to just leave Maya, everything, she just never has to work. No, it's just she has a safety net and she has to find her own way. She has to create her own economy, and there's a safety net that will support her and our charities. And then it's also that concept of generational wealth, but also generational learning. So every company we build, so I mentioned Heart Centre Business, where we train entrepreneurs how to succeed, we are deliberately structuring that business so it will live on without us. As in, we want that business to be here in 100 years' time, irrelevant to us, and we can be completely forgotten by that time. That's fine. But the difference the company can make, we want it to keep on doing it. So it's looking at that whole, I don't want a monument to me, but I want the difference I'm making today to be able to keep on going, even if no one knows who I was at any point.
Amazing. Thank you. And where can people find you?
Great question. Probably the easiest place is to go to heartcenterbusiness.com endeavours.com/book, because we wrote this ironically just before lockdown. It's our best-selling book, Grow Your Heart-Centered Business. And as Karene mentioned, when she bought the properties and bought 8 in 9 months, when we're very much all or nothing. So we decided, people asking us for years to write a book, and it's like, no, yes, we'll get to it. And we finally decided we'll never get into it. Let's just make the time. So we committed to writing the book, and we gave ourselves 2 weeks to start with to produce the first draft. So this was 2 weeks.
2 weeks?
Yeah, 2 weeks.
We did 20-hour
days.
Because we still had everything else going on. So it was just literally writing as much of a night as we could, getting up early, all that. And we were literally both sitting at the table on a Google document, adding bits here. Oh, what have you done? Oh, great. So after 2 weeks, we had draft 1, sent it to the publisher. They gave some feedback, said, right, we need to change it. We then took it back, and in 10 days, we doubled the length of a book. We were supposed to cut it down, but we increased it. So
it is a weighty tome. You know, a load of people kind of write, and it's quite dense as well. So yeah, it is another thing that we're super proud of,
because it's that whole. So in 3.5 weeks, we got a book produced. It became an Amazon bestseller. Oh, that's our dog in the background. It did become a bestseller. And it was the whole, right, we got that done, then we're going to go to Australia and have a rest, because after 3.5 weeks of 20-hour days, we were done.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic hit. We couldn't fly to Australia, and suddenly it's like, oh my God, all our clients need us more. Okay, keep going. But that's probably the best place to find us, because we wrote this as a passion project, going, let's put every single thing we teach our clients who pay us many £1,000s to learn, put it in a book, and we'll give it away for free. Because again, that concept of legacy, how can you pay it forward? Let's put it in a book. We wish everyone would read it and action it. It's full of actionable stuff, because then they'll never need us. But we also know they'll read it and go, wow, it's amazing. And therefore they might want to come to one of our trainings, one of our courses. So if anyone here listening wants a free copy, go to heartcenteredbusiness.com/book, and you can get your copy.
I think that'll be the first thing I do after end of this conversation. Look, guys, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure. You guys are truly inspirational. You've both got great stories, and I'm glad you found each other as well. It's as you said, sometimes entrepreneurship can be quite lonely. I'm very lucky. I've got a very supportive wife and 2 young kids, and I've got a dog as well. So life's good with the dog. But yeah, no, I'm really, really happy that you've gone through trials and tribulations, but you've come out and you've grown successful businesses. So well done. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Yes.